Hey guys, we recently launched the Attitude Era Generation merchandise store, which has an assortment of caps like the one I'm wearing now, as well as Under Armour hoodies, t-shirts, and a lot more. And I'll drop the link in the description below. Please check it out. Shawn Michaels did a shoot interview back in 2000, which to me is still one of the best interviews he's ever given. It was pre-Holy Shawn Michaels, which to me was the best version of him I guess from a WWE entertainment perspective. He was edgy. It was after he formed DX. This was when he retired, after he retired though, but he still kind of had that edge to him. And I always thought it would be pretty cool to add more context to the interview in the form of video clips and pictures and stuff like that to really engage the viewer with regards to the story that he told about his career, during the interview. So I spliced it up into chapters. I hope you enjoy and check it out.
I was 12 years old here in San Antonio. Saw Southwest Championship Wrestling for the first time. Got to stay up late. I saw it one time, and from the first time I saw it, I knew that's what I wanted to do. After that, it was being a fan, going to the matches, and then it wasn't long before I was watching the matches more as a student as opposed to being a fan, and followed me. I did it all throughout high school, and we put on our senior talent show as a wrestling match me and my buddy had, and it took over the whole school. And then when I went to I graduated, and $1 million question, what are you going to be? And I still want to be a wrestler. And at that time there was a local promoter here by the name of Fred Barron, who is now currently in jail because he turned into a Bond king and had somebody killed and yada yada. But so my dad and I, he was also a used car salesman. So my father and I went down not far from here, down in San Pedro, and went to find him and introduced myself to him. I was 17. And at that time, there was a commission here in Texas. You had to be 19 to be a wrestler. So he and my dad sort of agreed I should go to college, get an education, right, and wait till I was old enough to do it. So went up the road to Southwest Texas University, turned 18 that summer. Went for 2 semesters and just didn't do anything except learn how to drink mostly. And that's about it. Got a pair of 1.4s and came back home and told my dad I didn't want to waste his money. So I went back again and talked to him. At that time I was 18, but I was going to turn 19 that summer. I met him. He introduced me to Jose Lothario, and I trained for Jose for probably at the most maybe 2 months.
Really?
Yeah. And Jose said, well, you pretty much, you've got the basics. So nothing was left except for me to go out and then do it. And he started me out in Bill Watts' old Mid-South.
Blue corner, combined weight of 446 pounds from Atlanta and San Antonio, respectively, Jim Horton and Shawn Michaels.
And just went from there and,
right,
climbed the ladder from there.
What was Bill Watts like as a promoter?
He was incredibly strict. But for me, I didn't have anything to compare it to. I was 19 years old. So for me, it was the greatest thing in the world. I was fined my second week in the business. On the booking sheet, you get, when you're new there, on the TV part, it has your name there. But when you're a regular part of the, company, you don't have, everyone has to be a TV.
Right.
Well, I didn't know that. I'd never been a day in the business. So the next week, it didn't have my name, so I didn't show up. The next day after the TV, we're going to a town to meet the Rock and Roll Express at Popeye's Fried Chicken. And what were you for TV? And I said, well, it didn't have my name on it. They said, everybody's got to be at TV. I said, well, I didn't know. Got my check. I got fined $50. I went to Bill and I said, Bill, I just broke into business 2 weeks ago. I said, I didn't know that was a rule. He goes, now you do. And so, but I was never late I never missed a TV again.
Right.
So, but he was strict, but I think it was fair. Bill, just has a different way of doing it. He's what they sort of call a negative motivator. I think Bobby Knight-ish, if I were to compare him to somebody.
Right.
I'd say it was Bobby Knight, but I think he was just as successful.
Right. I guess from there you went to Texas All-Star? Well, you worked Texas a little bit.
From there I went to Kansas City.
Right.
first. Went to Central States, worked for Bob Geigel, where I met Marty, and then I came back here to Texas.
Right. And I guess when you went to, I guess it was Texas All-Star?
Yes.
And you formed what was it?
The American Force.
Right, with Paul Diamond and Nick
Yeah.
Kinitzky.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Nick and Paul were the original American Force. I came back down. They gave me this big, huge promise of like, no, you're going to be the big singles star. You're from here and this, that, and
Right.
the other. Came down here and Chavo Guerrero was booking at the time. And he goes, I'm really going to get you over. Come in the door. You can go 30 minutes with me, Broadway. And we're going to get you over big. I'm like, get you over big is usually a win, but
Right.
I'll take the 30 minutes. So we did that. Next day he goes, it didn't really work. So I think what we need here is, big Hispanic star. So he turned himself babyface
Right.
and put me in a tag team.
The American Force is going to come out on top.
Shawn Michaels. Steve, everybody knows it. You've seen all the rest. The American Force is still here and still the best.
So how long did you last there for?
I was here for 8 months.
Right.
8 months.
So then you went up to Vern?
Yes.
Okay. What was that like? What was Vern Gagne like as a promoter?
Vern was also, I can't say Vern was a negative motivator. Vern, that was the time where the wrestling business was changing.
Right.
Vince had taken over. So Vern was just really just an old time. He just didn't understand where the business was going. I can remember Marty and I's first meeting with him, us talking about the team, and him asking us, did we have a name? And we said, yeah, we want to be called Midnight Rockers. And he thought about it, and he, honest as God's my witness, asked us if, are you sure they'll know rockers like rock and roll, or do you think they'll mean like rocking chairs?
Right. Oh, God.
And we said, Vern, trust me. They're going to know the way we dress long hair. They're going to know rock and roll. So
the Rockers are going to get the world champions in the ring one way or another and prove beyond a shadow of a doubt who is the best team in the world today.
But Vern he wasn't around all that much, really. I mean, he would come to a couple shows here and there. Greg mostly handled everything. And I can't say, I mean, for me, it was a great experience again. I mean, it was wrestling. As long as I was wrestling, to me, it was great.
Right.
But it was just, Vince was going worldwide. They were getting, in their eyes, compared to what they had before, they were getting crushed.
Right.
And really, I mean, again, for us, we were doing okay, and they were on cable. And so it was great.
You guys had some great matches with Playboy Buddy Rose and Doug Summers.
Yeah, and we worked with them probably our entire time there.
Right.
I mean, almost 2 years solid, but it was a great experience. Buddy, for what he lacks in, every, other aspect of his life, he was a great teacher.
Right.
Really good.
What are your memories of the match from New Year's Eve, the bloodbath?
That was sort of the one I think that sort of put us on the map as a tag team. But we had so many with them. I mean, I liked that was one that got the most recognition because there was blood.
Right.
In my opinion.
Right.
We had some other classic matches with them.
When you worked there, you actually went to Memphis and you worked for a little bit up there as heels down in Lawler's territory, Jared's territory.
Yeah, that was actually the next time we came around.
Right.
We went from Vern to the WWF.
Right.
Lasted a day.
I was going to ask you about that. I read in Dynamite's book they pulled a rib on you or something like that, and something happened.
So he finally owns up. He owned up to it.
Yeah,
did he?
yeah.
There you go. Okay.
So what exactly happened there?
Well, I mean, like I don't know if they pulled a rib.
Right.
But, they just lied.
Right.
We went up there and we didn't have a match first night.
This is Rochester, New York, right?
Yeah, it was Buffalo one night and then Rochester the next.
Right.
The first night, Buffalo, we didn't have a match, so we just sort of met everybody. And then we were at a separate hotel, and the agents were trying to get us to go over to the other hotel. No, because we had this reputation of being partiers and stuff like that.
I was going to ask you about that too.
Yeah, but when we were. So to answer your question, yes, we were. But we were young and having fun. So, but we came in. We knew that we had that rep, so we were going to try to stay out. Try to play it low key our first couple days in there. But they all asked us to go over to the hotel Ramada Renaissance. So eventually, we'll go in there because they were saying, hey, it's really important to get to know the boys and stuff. So we went in there, and everybody was in there. And really, all that happened, we went down. There was Davey, Jim Powers, one other person I can't remember. But Marty and I were just talking to him. Then Jimmy Jack Funk comes over, and he's just hammered, Jesse Ball.
Right.
And he's hammering. He goes, hey, you guys are big party here. So no, we're just trying to be good. come on, you big fighter. And he bites, he just bites part of his glass off, chews it. I'm like, no. Come on, you gotta come on, show me what you got. Does another one. And he's just taking his eggs, and finally I said, no, we're not doing it. Come on, punk. And really, like now, okay. So I grabbed the glass. Okay, you want to see it? It's broken on my head. Boom, and I left.
Right.
And that was it. Then also, he was going after this girl. Well, this girl ends up leaving with Marty.
Right.
So the next day, and that's all that happened, just that.
Right.
The next day, we're coming into the lunchroom, catering, and he comes and he goes, what the is your problem? To Marty. And Marty goes, he thought it was ribbon, because we had hung out with each other before. Marty goes, what do you mean? What the is your problem? What? And so anyway, he goes on this big spiel about how we're throwing glasses, tearing a bar up, this and that. So we go on. We had to work with him that night. Him and somebody else, Jose Estrada, I think.
Right.
So one of the agents says, "Look, you better work with him." So we had the match, a good match. We come back. He goes, "Hey, I'm sorry, you guys are good workers." That night, Vince goes, "Hey, let's watch, throwing the bottles, throwing stuff in the bar," and walks out. We go, "Okay, sir." That was about it.
Right.
Now in 2 weeks, we get this call. Oh, they're firing us. So in 2 weeks, this thing is blown up into this whole. I can't really do it. It's the way the business is.
Right.
Everything starts as this little, molehill turns into a mountain. And plus, the truth is never nearly as exciting as the exaggerated story. So we go, please, let us go talk to Vince. So we fly up to the old office in Greenwich. Marty and I are sitting there just like I'm sitting here now. We got, it's back in the day we wore the cowboy boots, the wrestling,
Zubaz.
the snakeskin cowboy boots. And Vince comes out and goes, "Hey, nice boots." And we went, "Oh, thanks." He goes, "They're made for walking, We went, "Oh, God, please." He goes, "Oh, just kidding. Come on in." Came in, and then he fired us.
What were your initial impressions of Vince?
Just scary, bigger than life.
Right.
The same impression everybody's got of Vince McMahon when they first meet him. Bigger than life.
Right.
And I'm sure, you've done some of these, and I'm willing to bet that's probably the same answer everybody gets. That he's just this very
intimidating.
Very, but a great guy, down to earth, but just, he's still, Vince McMahon, he's a large man, so he is very much bigger than life.
Right.
Marty and I, we had good matches with almost everybody,
Definitely.
all the teams, and that's, I like to think Marty and I were sort of innovative for that time. I don't know that the tag team, the combination of tag teams and stuff like that, we're doing all the stuff Marty and I were doing. Now we're dinosaurs, but at the time it was very, very innovative, and we had a lot of good matches with a lot of people. Yeah, and we had good matches with the two big guys, Power
Speed? Yeah.
Warlord and Barbarian, and and even Barbarian and Haku, who worked at WrestleMania. And WrestleMania with Boss Man and Akeem. We had I like to think we had good matches with just about everybody.
Right. What exactly happened? I guess it was back October 30th. It was when you guys beat, Neidhart, and I guess Vince wanted to let Neidhart go, and they did the tag title change. And they said it never happened or something like that. Yeah, and
I don't know if it was. I don't recall it being a thing of letting Neidhart go. It was just we had. It was the same old story, like sort of very symbolic for the rest of my career. They had no intentions of putting the belts on us, but then after a while, Marty and I were getting over. So I said, it's about time we switched the belts. So we were going to do a 2 out of 3 fall with the Hart Foundation. We went out there and we were having a match, but the top rope broke. Is what happened. So, and I can remember. Bret having me or Marty, one of us in chinlock, and he said, we're just going to stay here. Let's make him fix it. We can edit it up.
Right.
So, Bret's, Bret and I are both, I can't remember if I was on the outside or I was inside with him, but we were saying, fix her up. And they were just, the ref was frozen. So we continue this match with no top rope, and they do their finish, the whole in one fall where they sort of, we're trying to work this match where there's no top rope, which was extremely difficult. So anyway, we finished the match. We get the belts. Probably 2 or 3 days later, Vince calls up and says, "Well, we're going to, return the belts because we can't. There's just no way we can put that thing on TV." Right. So that was really how that happened. And Marty and I were a little disappointed, but he said that we were gonna that they would just put him on us another time. But then, from what I understand, is that had already gotten out so much,
Right.
that it's sort of you don't want to. It would have been too obvious if it, the impact wouldn't have been the same.
Right. What was Hulk Hogan like in the locker room at the time?
He wasn't in our locker room. He had his own locker room. So, but he was all right. My honest opinion of him was that I could tell that he was a worker right off the bat.
Right.
He knew very well not much of what came out of his mouth was the truth. He always had an agenda to everything he did and said.
Right. As far as tag team with Marty, did you guys always get along as a tag team, or was there was tension sometimes between the two?
Yeah, a little, but for the most part, you're talking about 7 years.
Right.
At the very least, we had great times.
Right.
We had great times. But that's the only way I can say it without getting myself in trouble. But we did. We had a lot of fun. I was 19 when I met Marty, and I was 20 when I went up to Minneapolis and we started tagging. For all that time, for us to get in maybe one fight is not bad at all. And that was the result of us both just being hammered.
Right. That was Denver, I think. Denver or something like that.
Yeah, Denver, exactly.
Yeah.
And that was just us, in the room and just playing around at first, and all of a sudden getting into a fight, and the next day not really having anything.
Right.
I remember the next day I went to Phoenix, and him calling me, going, could I talk? Or, you could beat me up when I come to the door. And I said, no, you come on up. And he knocked on the door, and I came to the door and looked out. He was down the hall. He goes, "No, you sure?" That's the way it always was. Like, get in here. Couldn't hit you now if I tried. It's too funny. So it was just one of those things that happened. You spent and that's the thing. Marty and I did. Marty and I weren't one of those teams like Bret and Jim never stayed together, and most time didn't travel together. Right. Marty and I stayed together, traveled together. And everywhere we lived in the same apartment complex. He and I were together, right, 24 hours a day for 7 years. So I personally say one fight, I think it's great.
Right. What led to the breakup of the team? I heard, I don't know how true it is that Pat Patterson wanted to split you guys up and basically, make you into a big star, and they didn't really have plans for Marty. So I don't know how true it is. I guess you guys gave notice or something like that to WCW at the time.
Well, what happened was we were at this shoot for a cereal box that was coming out. It was me and Marty, Road Warriors, Beefcake, and like 2 other singles guys.
Right.
Everybody was getting $5,000 a piece for it. Marty and I were getting $2,500 a piece. And we, they were telling us, because you're a tag team, you get split $5,000. With the Warriors, we're getting 5 and 5.
Right.
And we got wind of that. So Marty got hot. And he was hot, and that's bullshit. I'm going to give him a call. And I said, all right. He goes, you stick with me? I said, yeah. I said, we've always stuck together. So, but I didn't know he meant, I'm going to call and give our notice. So he calls up and apparently threatens, we're leaving, going to WCW. And this whole time that he's been saying, and the whole time prior to this, he's been saying he's been talking with him. He can get us a couple $100,000 there, to go there. So he calls me up and goes, what? Oh, no, I get a call from Vince. I'm sorry to hear you're leaving. What? And he goes, well, Marty called, and apparently you guys are, upset. I said, well, yeah, we're upset. It's pretty unfair. He goes, it's not a problem. I'll send another $2,500 each to you in the mail. All right. And that's the thing. Marty never did any of that kind of stuff. He didn't just say, that's unfair. He would go off and burn that bridge. Right. Marty wasn't that much of a, he would just put a flamethrower to a place, and that was it. That was the answer. So, so I said, well, that sounds fine to me. I said, because I don't want to leave. And he says, well, Shawn, I'm going to tell you what. He said, well, if you leave, that's fine. He said, but you've always got a singles career here. You've always got a career here, period. He said, but I think that, he said, you're getting, you've matured now. You're getting to the point where, you're not fucking up like you did way back when you first came in. He said, I think you're going to be a big star in this business. So whenever you want to do it, you let me know. And I said, well, I said, really with this, with Marty having done this without asking me, I said, I gotta be honest with you. I said, I think it's that time, because I think that's sort of the last straw. I said, plus, I want to move on, So he said, well, just let me know. So I hung up with him and I called Marty. I said, what are you doing? You giving our notes? He said, well, you said you'd stick with me. I said, well, Yeah, I thought you meant,
Right.
I didn't know that meant you were going to call and tell them we're quitting without, consulting me first. I said, because I'm not just going to get up and leave. So he says, well, we can make more money WCW. I said, well, all right then. I said, then call. He goes, well, here's look. He said, fuck, I think you probably, you should probably call. He goes, you know me, I got heat, people, and I think I'm a fuck up. So maybe you should call. I said, I don't know who to call. I said, who's the person you've been talking to? He goes, well, I haven't, because I haven't really been talking to anybody. So finally, I asked one of the nasty boys to get like Dusty's number.
Right.
And that's who it was. I think it was Knobs. I asked him to get Dusty's number. I called Dusty. He sent me his Magnum TA, and finally I talked with him, and we might be able to give you 75, maybe 105. It's like we're making double that now.
Right. In
the WWF. We weren't, but we were probably making 150, 180-ish. So if we're gonna move, we'll at least make some more money. He's we just can't afford that. Everybody's calling here because we give guarantees and asking for big money. It's just not something we can do. I called Marty and I said, look, they ain't biting. And, I don't know who it was you talked to. He said, well, and that's when it came clean. I haven't really talked to him. So I went, look, I said, Marty, I got to be honest. I said, I've always told you when we first started this, my ultimate goal was to go singles and have a singles career. I said, and this whole debacle to me, I said, I'm not saying it's your fault. I said, but it's something that I don't want to run into anymore.
Right.
I want to handle my own career. I said, I want to go singles. Because I think it's time for us to work that angle that we've always talked about. Because we used to always talk about eventually we're going to have to do, the angle. So, he was a little upset. And then, he goes, what's supposed to happen to me? And I said, well, what's going to happen with both of us? We're both going to then get judged on wherever our careers take us. And he was upset, and I was the prick for doing it, obviously. I was the prick for a lot of things just because I was one to speak up. But I said, look, sorry. I said, but just because you say they're going to go with you doesn't mean you can't be a successful singles wrestler. Right. That's the way the WWF, certainly, you get over, they're going to use you. Plain and simple. Doesn't matter if they like it, they don't like it. You get over, you're going to get used. And I said, then that's what I told him. I said, if you could just, whatever we do, whether I go over or not, at least make it all good. I said, because where you go after, that's really going to determine where you go in your career. I said, you and I will do our thing. I said, and you think they'll put me over? I said, and I want them to. Right. I said, but the important thing is where we both go after that. Because that's only going to be the Rockers splitting up and having a match. That's one match. That's got nothing to do with where you go after that. So, I ended up, the barbershop idea was an idea that I had for an angle for me and the Nasty Boys, for Marty and I and the Nasty Boys. Right. But then I decided to just use that. I ran it by Vince and he liked it. So we just used it for Marty and I did the breakup actually here in San Antonio. She was cool. Sherry was very cool. She was great with me. She was very protective of me because, one, I was going singles, and that was still at a time when a lot of the older guys were here. So they wouldn't sell for me. They wouldn't do a lot of things. Didn't want to put me over. Ran into a great many problems. And all the time, she was very supportive, and she'd see, guys were stiff with me, and she'd say, throw them out here. I'd throw them out, and she'd get them. Right. Wow, she'd kick them and scratch them, and then they'd come back into me. Don't throw me out there. But she was. And she had been with Randy. So she was also very smart, and she could see this bullshit. These guys, she said, they're being stiff with you. They don't want to put you over. They're not selling for you. She said, and half of them are being pricks behind your back and going and talking to them, trying to bury it. So there were a lot of things that I had to go through, which in turn made me angry, which in turn was the reason later on in my career I stuffed it in in everybody's face. Right.
And then you had your run with the Bulldog and you won the IC title. Right. What are your memories of some matches with British Bulldog?
All good. Me and Davey had really good matches. The only thing I don't like is that I don't think we ever get credit for it. I thought they were good, and I just didn't like the fact that he didn't get that much credit for them, and they don't. Not until years later, I think, until I got out of wrestling, people go, "Their matches with the Bulldog were really good." But I thought David was always really easy to work with and a lot of fun. Right. And it was just, not doesn't bother me like tons. It was just like, I think I could have had, because I never really wanted to do a really big long angle with Davey. Davey was always a guy that came in, he did one shot with, and then he went somewhere else, and you went and did a program with somebody else. But he never got to work a program with people because I'm guessing it's because he wasn't that great on the stick.
Right.
The British Bulldog is coming for one reason and one reason only, and that's to take the gold.
But he was a great worker and really a great deal of fun to work with because he wasn't hung up on anything. He was the first guy that I got to work with that was more concerned about just having a good match like I was.
Yeah, a lot of guys basically back in the day, they just went through the motions. And, I mean, they still do today. And did you ever have heat behind the scenes? I know Ricky Steamboat said that he always had heat with certain guys because he'd go out there and work an awesome match. And then the other guys would have to follow his match and be like, oh, you just killed me.
Oh, yeah. And they would say, you're doing too much. You got to stop doing that much. That doesn't make sense. And, oh, yeah. And again, that's, as I was saying to you earlier, that's why later on, when I finally got a chance to make it, I was finally able to say, no, fuck you. You guys were pricks to me for so long. Now I'm a great guy. I didn't forget any of that stuff. But they were exactly like that. They were all extremely lazy. I mean, when Marty and I came in there, it wasn't 2 months before he and I were closing every show. With the Conquistadors, we'd go on last. Hogan would go on fourth or fifth before intermission. He'd be gone. Marty and I closed every show. And then when I went singles after that, I closed just about every show in my career in the WWF, and I was never getting main event pay until the end.
Then Marty came back at the Monday Night Raw, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And, he beat him for the belt. What are your memories of that match?
It was just, I think I remember Vince, because I didn't know he was coming back. I remember Vince bringing it on me and, saying, sounds like a good idea to me. Oh, that's cool. I mean, I would have liked to have, because that angle between Marty and I never, because he came in and out, never got, what it could have been, and every time he came back, I told him that. I was like, why didn't you stay here? First thing you did wrong was shoot yourself in the foot, you know? So, but I mean, the match was good. It was in that Manhattan Center. It was one of the first, Monday Night Raws. And, the Manhattan Center was a great environment, very jumping atmosphere in that small place.
Right.
So I thought it was cool. And working with Marty was easy because he and I knew each other like the back of our hands. Our timing was there. Stuff you didn't even have to talk about. You could just see it on each other's face and know what was coming up next.
Right.
I got a phone call one day. Vince says, failed drug test. And I said, what? He's failed drug test. So you're on steroids. I said, I'm on, and you accused me a lot of stuff. But steroids was never my bag. And plus that time I was fat. That's when I was out. That's when Kevin was here, Scott was here. We were just out drinking every night. I was eating with these guys. And he says, you're on steroids. I said, no. I said, I'm not taking steroids. And he said, well, we've tested positive. I said, to what? And he goes, I don't know, some form of testosterone. I said, what? Can you be more specific? He goes, well, I'd have to run more tests. Well, do it. I said, I'd like to know what you're accusing me of. And he said, well, I'm not going to do that. He said, you're on them. I said, I'm not on them. And then he said, it's not very much, just trace. I said, well, I guess it probably is. I said, because best I could figure out, someone must have, which went on a bunch. And it was real simple. I could admit that I was on them, and it could be just between he and I could come back to work. Or I could say, fuck you, and take the 6 weeks off.
Right.
Being who I was, I said, fuck you, I'm taking 6 weeks.
Right.
I'll see you in 6 weeks.
Right.
So, because I'm not going to, because I wasn't, and that's the way I've always been with Vince. And I also think, looking back on it, I think that was his way of testing me. And because after that, he never ever gave me an ultimatum after that.
Right. Because
he knew that I was always, if I believed I didn't do something, I wasn't going to admit that I did, because I didn't do it.
What are your views on steroids and painkillers and wrestling?
They're always going to be there. I was never a big steroid guy, but I've taken, I've done prescription pills. And there's not anybody that's going to tell me that I didn't have every reason in the world to take it.
Right.
I used to beat the hell out of myself every night, night after night. So they're part of wrestling. They're part of this business. And the chances of getting rid of him, you know, you'd have a better chance, you know, pissing against the wind and not getting wet,
Right.
you know, than trying to rid the business, that kind of stuff. I think the best you can do is, as they said with Michael Jordan, you can't stop him, you can just contain him. So I think that's all you can really do is just try to contain it. And they did that. They did that with, you know, with the drug testing and all that. It got so much that all of us, you know, just went, it's not, you know, it's not worth it.
Right. Was Vince really strict with that, or was he like letting top guys go? He was strict because that was about the whole thing.
Yeah, he was strict.
Well, our locker room now, in terms of weight, as far as big guys are concerned, is lighter than it's ever been in history. There's an expression in our business that here's where you make your money. It's your face. It's what you do with it.
I mean, best I can assume, I think that, I mean, I eventually got to be a top guy, and, you know, I never got cut any slack.
Right.
But I mean, at that time, you know, there was also, at that time, I also had my priorities different. You know, I mean, at one time, you know, I was like, oh man, what's to do? We just want to do this. But then once you realize, okay, now I want to make money.
Right.
So that stuff wasn't, you know, the importance of it really declines when you're concerned about making money.
Right.
What happened was we took 6 weeks off, came back, and what I did was go to WrestleMania and have the ladder match. And the match made me famous. So
that's what I was going to ask you.
I not only took the 6 weeks off, but I came back and
what are your memories of that
shoved
match?
it in his face. I mean, in my opinion, that's the match that made the world recognize me. And it was great to be out there with my buddy. That's a friend of mine. It was great that it was our idea. It was great that it was a match that nobody was sure about. It was great that it was a match. It was put on a pay-per-view that wasn't really billed as being anything huge or spectacular. And that when WrestleMania 10 was over with, that's the only match you can really remember that was on that show.
Right.
So that's one of the definitely the big highlights of my career.
What caused, I guess, Vince to come to one of the house shows? There was supposedly you guys were going to go on strike or something like that. It was rumored in the sheets that the clique was going to hold Vince, right?
We're gonna go on strike.
Right. And,
no, I remember it was Indianapolis, and we just asked him. You know, we just said, you know, because the angles, the show, there was no strike. It was you know, it was me saying, I think what we're doing right now, angle wise and stuff like that, which eventually turned into the WWF attitude.
Right.
Was me saying, whatever we're doing right now is wrong. It stinks. So we just said, can you come down and let's figure out a new way the company's got to go in a different direction, you know? And we came down, we all just met in the hotel, and we went through the whole list, and he brought it all. He goes, okay, I want you to go through this list and you tell me who you think can work and who can't.
Right.
So we just went through the list and did that. No one got fired. No one got hired,
right.
anything like that. He just wanted an idea. And most of the guys, again, people that didn't like us, or the guys, you know, like Candido was a shit, he can work. And the fucker would stop worrying about what his girlfriend's doing, you know, and be in denial about it because, you know, whatever, you know, I mean, he's got to stay focused because the kid could work,
right.
You know. But I mean, it was just a meeting to go over, you know, and we told him, you ain't got to fly in. It's just something you need to think about. No. You know, he did all that stuff on his own, you know, because he liked it. Vince liked it for years. You have to understand, for years and years, this guy had a bunch of guys who were making a ton of money that were lazy. You know, back in the day, you know, the Hogans, the Beefcakes, all them guys, they were all lazy. None of them cared. They're all too busy getting, you know, messed up, doing whatever,
right.
Doing their thing, and making a shitload of money. Now, for the first time ever, Vince had a bunch of young guys, hungry guys that ate, slept, and drank the wrestling business, and then cared, and when he cared enough to, you know, and weren't afraid of him. Nobody else called him, you know, and he used to always tell me, he goes, the problem is, nobody tells me anything. You know, he goes, I hear something, I hear it 3 months later, 4 months later. You know, he said, if you just tell me. So I just started being the guy that was honest with him. Something stunk. I said, that stinks. It sucks.
Right.
You know, why? Because it's this, that, and that, you know. Really? Yeah. You know, I mean, I can remember, you know, I can remember him finding me $10,000 because stuff gauze down my shorts on one of the Raws.
Right.
And him threatening to fine me and me saying, it's funny. That's funny. Having this big conversation. By the end of the conversation, he takes back the fine and says, we're going there. And going there is now what you see now. The girls, the cuss words, all that stuff. you know, and I had said, and I said to him, Vince, you're 50, you know, at that time he was 50 years old. I said, you're 50 years old. You're trying to tell me what's cool. You're 50 and I'm 30.
Right.
You know, you don't know what's cool anymore. You know, I said, plus all the boys were laughing at what I did. He goes, well, yeah, but that's the boys. And I said, but who are the boys? He said, you don't think every one of those guys was a wrestling fan? I said, that's what wrestlers are. They're wrestling fans that eventually turn into wrestlers.
Right.
You know, I said, and the people were laughing at one another. And that's eventually he just said, oh, God, you know, I think, and now he's, you know, going on to what he's going on to. So he liked the fact that he had these guys that cared enough to even go at a house show and say, okay, yeah, we're in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, but that's, you know, that's a horrible show. It sucks. You know, the finishes aren't good. You know, this doesn't happen. That's not happening. You're pushing this guy that's a jabroni, you know, or whatever. When he doesn't care, he doesn't like the job, he bitches about everything, and he's not even good.
Right.
You know, and that's when he started just, you know, I mean, that's like, I mean, it was, you know, years or like a year before that, but like Lex, he was going to push Lex, but then eventually he looked at him and goes, guys, I mean, Lex hated the job,
Right.
hated being on the road, you know, didn't like anything. And then ultimately had the whole world at his feet. And, you know, and eventually, you know, Vince, you know, eventually saw that, I guess, and just sort of put him in a team or did whatever. But the wrestling business is full of those kind of guys. And it's amazing how many guys go, I want to be in this business. Vince McMahon, make me a millionaire, but I don't want to do anything.
Right. Right.
It's just, yeah, it's not how you do it. So we were just guys that took the initiative. Okay, you'll love this. The very first WrestleMania where he was dropping the belt to me. He comes up to me, you know, a couple weeks prior to that as we're building the angle, and he says, I want this thing to get to a point where we work everybody, the sheets of this, that, and the other. He said, so if you hear me saying bad stuff about you, don't worry about it. I said, all right, no problem. So we go to WrestleMania, and in WrestleMania, the whole WrestleMania weekend, everything, I can't get a hold of him. He's being short with me, and when I do get a hold of him and stuff like that. So, but I'm thinking, okay, maybe you know, because Bret's different. He's to himself. He's reserved. He doesn't like, you know, to travel with folks. I mean, he's not very outgoing. We have the match, and then right after the match, boom, he leaves. Not there to say thank you. You know, I mean, I don't know if you know, but it's traditional.
Right.
Everybody's there to say thank you, congratulations, whatever. Not there. He's gone. I said, where's Bret? He left. So he's gone. I don't see him that night. Try to call him. Can't get a hold of him. You know, just say thanks for the match. You know, thanks, you know, for providing one of the, you know, because we were still buddies at that point, or at least I thought we were.
Right.
So then after that, you know, I'm going on my little run with the belt there. And all of a sudden, all the stuff starts coming out. He's in this Calgary Sun. He's saying this, and he's knocking my family, and just really going in. I'm thinking, and the whole time thinking, okay, well, he said what's going to happen, but the family thing's a little bit of, you know, calling me a faggot, and, you know, what kind of parents would, you know, have their son here. And that's the one that really rubbed me the wrong way. He said, whatever you want, I've always said, whatever you want about me, leave the family out of it. So he, to me, and in my eyes, he always drew first blood with that. So I was, you know, but I ignored it. Then he starts going through these contract negotiations with Vince. Now he's leaving the WCW, supposedly. It's like, well, okay, now you're saying all this shit about me, but now you're going to WCW. But all that keeps coming. All that stuff keeps going on. I'm like, well, if he's going to leave, why is he still working the angle between us?
Right.
Okay, so now everybody in the office and the boys, so now it's like, you know, and I tell them, no, Bret said that because we're going to work all the sheets and everything. And they're biting on it. If they were biting on it big before there was ever actually any problems. They were writing that there were before there ever actually were. And they said, oh man, did he work you? I said, what do you mean? I said, man, he said that just so he can fucking dog the shit out of you. I said, no, he's just working him. And they said, really? Have you seen anywhere in there where you're saying bad stuff about him? And if you look anywhere, to this day, I still haven't. You know, the only thing people can ever accuse me of is what I said on live TV. But I've never once gone to a dirt sheet or something like this that said bad stuff about Bret Hart. And to this day, I won't. So anyway, then of course they planted that seed in my head. I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, is he working? Fuck yeah, I've been in the business for a long time. You know, he's a smart guy. Then he comes back and and first thing right off the bat, says, "I'm sorry about stuff I said about your parents." He goes, "I was thinking about writing them a letter and apologizing. I'm really sorry about that." I said, "Well, that was a little heavy. Get me all you want. Don't worry about it. But leave them out of it." So, we're still talking. He's back now. Everything's okay. Then, like I said, I don't know if it's him or if it's the office. But now he's back. Now that clique is in full force in the wrestling world. And apparently he has a problem with that. But while he was gone, a lot of things changed. A lot of things changed. Vince, for the first time ever, had a guy that was on top who was single and did everything. I did everything that man asked me. Never home. 285 days that year. 365. So he has a real big problem with all that. Then he's in the dressing room, but he doesn't talk to me much. He's very short with me. So, and the stuff is all the stuff he's saying in the dirt sheets in his Calgary Sun article and stuff like that are brutal.
Right.
But then we're in the locker room and he's not, he's short, but he's still like, hey. And so that now it's starting to irk me a little bit because nothing bothers me more than being like this to my face and I'm fucking from behind. I don't mind saying, I don't like you, I think you're a dick to my face. I can live with that easily. But I didn't like that. So now I'm starting to get a little, perturbed at it. And I can't, for the life of me, I cannot remember what is the one thing that finally, I can. So now we're doing the little back and forths a little bit. And he's supposed to just go out there and just dog the shit out of me on TV. And then boom, I hit him with the kick. And that day, he comes to me at Raw and says, "Look, we need to have a talk." So, okay. Because, things are getting a little heated. And so he sits down and he goes, "Look, this thing's getting out of hand, this, that, and the other." And I said, "Yeah, I think so too." I said, "Fuck you, I said, "I haven't said anything in rebuttal to all the shit you've said." And I said, "And I got to tell you, Bret, I'm tired of it." I said, I said, I realize it, but I said, but you know what? At WrestleMania 12, I felt like I was here to you. I said, I don't feel that way anymore. I said, I'm here now. I said, I want to be treated as your equal. And if you're not going to do that, then I'm going to start unloading on you.
Right.
It's that simple. You treat me as your equal, or I'm unloading on you. Both barrels. No problem, Shawn, no problem. We go out on Raw that night. He's supposed to do that. He talks and buries me till we go off the air. And that's how the show went off the air. And he goes, "Oh, geez, I'm fucking sorry." And I said, no guy that's been in the business for 18 years does that. What's that supposed to mean? I said, I think you're lying. That's what it means. And what are you going to do about it? I said, I don't know. But I'm sure you'll find out. Because I didn't know. Then, I don't know if it's the next week or whatever, but bam, I hit him with and I just heard something, so I just hit him with the Sunny Days comment, and I mostly did it just to be funny, but
right.
Obviously it wasn't, just being a smart ass, but obviously that one, he doesn't like that one, and, for good reason. Nobody does like the truth. No one ever does in the wrestling business. But that one really sends him off the wall, and so now we don't talk. We don't talk for probably 3 months in the same locker room, and now it is, white hot.
Right.
White hot. Everything, and people walking around on eggshells, everything. So and he's getting his and he's really doing the politicking there. As many people on his side as he wants. Me, I'm not doing anything because I got my 4 buddies, and or 5 actually, counting PJ, and I don't really care about and because I don't care, because to me it's a childish game, and it's the wrestling business. Shit like that always goes on, and the truth is always way underneath, and no one 9 times out of 10 doesn't care about it. 3 months later in Hartford, Connecticut, finally he comes up and goes, "Shawn," I said, "What?" I said, "Fuck you." I said, "You haven't talked to me for 3 months." I said, now you've decided that it's time for us to talk to. Well, guess what? I don't want to talk to you. And I walked away. And I'm sitting there in my bag, and I'm facing, my bag's in the corner like that. I'm in the corner. He comes, he pushes me from behind. When I hit the wall and I turn around, he goes, "You want to talk about my fucking family?" I said, "What?" He said, "You want to talk about my fucking family?" And I said, "Give it a rest." And he goes for a swing and just went like this and went past me. And what made it worse, because he did that, I just sort of went, I chuckled a little bit. Because again, I've heard all these stories. He's got to kick your fucking ass and this and the other. It's like, fine, won't be the first time. But he does, and again, he does a swing, and I just chuckled because I thought it was funny that he missed. He goes to double leg dive me. I just sort of hook him. We go to this little partition, one of the things they have on the interview rooms to keep the sound in. So we go through that into the shower. So we both sort of got each other front face locked, and he's just got a hold. I mean, right there, you can still see it still gone, the hair, and he just got a hold of that son of a bitch. And that's the fight, by the way. We're just holding each other. Everybody comes in, breaks it up, and he just takes that hunk out. I was like, "Oh, fuck. I'd rather you punch me." And he goes, "You're fucking with my family." I said, "How?" "You're fucking with my family." I said, "How?" I said, "You're fucking with my family." I said, "How?" He goes, "What's with the Sunny Days comment?" I said, "Well, you're blaming me because you fucked Sunny? You son of a bitch." They held him back, and that was the end. So then I just went up to Vince. I said, "You know what? You got a lunatic in there." I said, you call me when you get all this shit worked out." I said, "You've obviously worked him into a frenzy, or somebody has." I said, "So I'll see you later." Mark Calloway, for me, was, for a guy that's, that I'm not, we're friends, but not a best friend, I don't want to make click buddies or anything like that. He was the best professional experience I've had in all my 16 years in wrestling was of working the program with the guy. He was the best, by far. And, go out there and have that match, like the ladder match, and have so many people want to copy it after that is very flattering. And it was a great match. It was fun. I liked it because it was our idea. Well, I say our, me and Hunter's idea to because we're gonna go with the Taker and what kind of match could be. So, and I remember seeing a cage match, I remember seeing the big one with the roof on it. Right. They made it, they called it the cell, right? And originally, I don't know if you know the old cage, they had the big blue one. Yeah. That didn't give. And I told Vince, I don't want that one, a mesh one, because, those are the ones you couldn't work with that other big son of a bitch at all. It was metal, right. You just couldn't work with that cage, right? So eventually, he got rid of that one and gave us the big mesh one, and it was cool. We did that, I remember that day going on the top and Mark saying, "What are you doing up there?" I got an idea. He goes, "Do you want to get my big fat ass up there?" Of course you could, but it was cool. I mean, you could. I liked it because I like it more than the one he had with Mick because it was, 45 minutes. And it told a story more than theirs. Theirs was around 2 big bumps, and ours told a story. There was a match, and then there was all the other stuff. Our match wasn't defined by what by 2 bumps. Right. But on Mick's side, I remember him telling me, he's like, "Well, I can't wrestle 45 minutes, so I just figured I would just throw myself on the top of that thing." I remember seeing that, and I was just, whew. I told him, you're crazy. You win for whatever it is you wanted to win. Right. You win for taking the highest one. Very weird day. You could feel something that day. Bret didn't get there till like 5, very late. People wondered if he was going to show up, but just you could tell something was in the air that day. And I don't know if it's because you could see it with the boys too. All the boys were different that day, and I think that might have been just because Shawn and Bret finally got it. But at the same, that friction, all that stuff, sort of died down. I don't know. At least in my mind, it had. I think in the wrestling world, in the underground, the dirt sheet world, I think they had built it up into being, ooh, what's going to happen? But it was a very different day that day. But he came in and then did their thing. Then he and I had a long, nice long talk, which will then prove what everyone wants to know. But he obviously, if he was wired, which he was, as you saw in his biography, when he went into Vince, I talked to him right after that. We had a long conversation. He was obviously wired when he talked to me. But it didn't show any of that because that would have then proven my innocence in the whole the whole scam. But he didn't use that in his piece because my part was to play the bad guy.
Right.
But we had a very nice conversation. He told me the whole story. And I was quite taken back by the fact that I didn't think that no matter what feelings he and Vince had, well, all I can guess is that he must it couldn't have happened the way his little biography said. And I know that it didn't because I saw some of it. I haven't seen the whole thing, but I saw the part where he's in the limo talking about how I'm saying, he's not comfortable calling me a fag and all this, that, and the other. And I'm telling him, yeah, no, say it.
Tap into him sort of being gay and hit into this and get on him about that. And I'm like going, do you want me to say these things? And Shawn's like, yeah, hit me with this, hit me with that.
And of course, that wasn't true because one, he was very comfortable saying that because he said it all the time.
Right. And
two, what I said was, you can say whatever you want, but can you stay off that stuff? Because it bothers my parents a little bit. So that was Bret just acting for the camera. That was just a lie, plain straight out lie. Because I never said anything like that. I said, don't mind. I said, but just you've been hammering that forever now. Can you just lay off it? Because my dad don't like to, it just offends my parents a little bit, and I was tired of hearing it.
Right.
It's been like over a year now talking about these. It's like it's a gimmick, dude. So anyway, we had a nice conversation, and he told me about the whole thing of Vince trying to get rid of him, how he wanted to stay, but he wasn't about to take any less money. So obviously he didn't want to stay that bad.
Right.
And that was the thing with Bret is that Bret would not in a million years would admit to in any way of being maybe not fair or taking himself or things a little too serious. But he did realize that that he had overreacted somewhat to a lot of the things that had gone on, and that I hadn't said anything bad about him except that one comment, and that he felt that he let the office work him up into a frenzy, into a shoot, so to speak, and that he realized that the WrestleMania 13 that he realized no one had said to me I was supposed to put Bret over because it was never asked, and because I guess apparently Vince, I think it finally come clean. I think because Bret was using that for a long time. Will you let him do this? And I think Vince finally said, look, I never asked him like that. That's why that's why I had no problem taking time off, because I didn't ask him. Because I didn't know that was one WrestleMania where Vince didn't know what the hell he was doing. He didn't have any idea where to go. Because he knew the only match was really me and Bret, but he didn't want to go that way because he didn't want to put the belt back on Bret. And he knew that if he went into that match and didn't do that, Bret would really went off.
Right.
So anyway, but still, we had a nice conversation, started talking about the match, got all that taken care of.
Did Vince ever call you the Wednesday before and ask you if you get pinned by Bret?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was a heel. I didn't have a problem,
Because he went to Bret. He called Bret up. I don't know if you're aware of this. Vince called Bret and said that you kind of refused to get pinned.
He was saying that because he did tell me. He did say that Bret's leaving, and then he did ask, "Fuck, I'm not doing it if he's leaving."
Right.
There's no way. So no, you're correct. I did refuse because he was leaving. I said, I'm not. I said, what? I said, you want me to do that? I said, you really want me to do that? I'll do it. I said, if you want me to put over a guy that's going to go to WCW, I'll do that. I said, but if you're asking me, do I think I should do it? No, I think it's fucking stupid. he wanted to hear me say no. That's when I started finally realizing what he was looking for. And he wanted me to say no so he could go back to Bret and say no. So that he could use that against Bret to say, look, we need to have a finisher. But I remember saying, fuck no, we're not going to, because Hunter was on the phone. Both Hunter and I were on the phone.
Right.
And they saying, fuck no, that's fucking stupid. He goes, well, Bret doesn't want to do this, that, and I said, all right, fine. I said, do you want, and that's because I knew if I said it like that, he's going to go, hell no, I'm not going to do that. I said, you want me to put over a guy from WCW, I'll do it. I said, but it's fucking stupid, So we get there, and then it's a different story, because then we get to the show, and it's a different story. Then it's a DQ, and because if I remember correctly, it was supposed to be just that show, and then he was leaving. But now it's going to be this show. Then he's coming out on Raw, I think, and relinquishing the belt.
Right.
But I mean, there was never, because this thing about me getting the match as a result of the Hell in a Cell match, this was the first time the world title was coming to me that I wasn't one of those things where they said, you're going to get the belt with this. You know what I mean?
Right.
He was just, what had happened was Bret was a heel, but then we turned heel and we just sort of passed him up.
Right.
Because I don't think there was ever any intention of putting the belt back on me when we formed DX. And I don't think they knew how that was going to go because it was so very different. And that was the start of the new attitude and all that kind of stuff. So he was sort of just playing with that. If it worked, we can put it on Shawn. If it doesn't, they'll just do their DX thing or whatever. So there wasn't any real, it's going to go to him. It's going to go to him. Sort of Vince sort of feeling it out. But it's going to be a DQ. And at that time, I was up there, but again, as a heel, had the heat and all that. So he'd said, he'll relinquish the belt and we'll put the belt on you some other time. I don't remember the specific being any kind of match or anything. Because all that shit changes in his head day by day. So I don't put much, cloud into what he says about that particular time. But so that's what he was going to do. So we just worked out a good match, a DQ. And that was that. And it was Bret's spot, actually, which again is, if you go back and look at the whole thing, and I especially after I see his documentary and how he just didn't want to do it, for him to get beat, or for them to say he got beat with his old move,
right,
is very ironic, very symbolic of what went on. But that was his spot. I can remember us going over it with Pat. And I remember Pat saying he wasn't in on it, but Pat's the guy we went over the match with. And again, I don't want to accuse him, but Pat's the guy we went over the match with. So he's the only guy that could have known. I don't know, unless he told someone else and then they, whatever.
Right.
But we did that spot. I mean, and he went because he was just going to reverse it, and I was going to go out and grab the rope, continue our match, and then it was eventually going to have, I think, Hunter and China come down. Then the Harts come down, just get into a big schmoz and end it.
So you're pretty pissed off when it happened.
Huh?
If you watch the video,
I didn't, because one, I knew that I was going to be in the same situation that I've always been in. But this time, most of the time I put myself in that position. I didn't mind. This time I was involuntarily put into a position. I knew I was going to be the scapegoat. I knew I was going to be the guy to get blamed. I knew I was going to, I knew it was all going to go on me. And like I said, times in my career when I purposely put myself there and I knew it was going to happen, I didn't mind. This was the time when I wasn't prepared for that. So, yeah, I didn't like it. And again, it was just, it's one thing to talk about, because in our conversation, Bret said that. Bret said, a lot of guys told me not to let you put a hold on me or go for any false finishes. And I said, well, don't. Don't. Doesn't matter to me. He said, no, we got to have a match. And I said, it's fine. I said, but you ain't, because I can remember him saying, like, I don't want to see you talk over with Vader and some other guys. And they said, well, don't do this, don't do that. So he was aware, of what could have possibly happened. As was everybody. Like I said, it was a very, very different day that day. But it's one thing to talk about. And there were a lot of guys saying to me, fuck that, man. You can't just let the guy, who's to say he's going to show up tomorrow at Raw? Which is the $1 million question everybody was asking me. And I said, go ask him, because finally at that time, that was this whole Bret Shawn thing, I'd had enough of. So I wasn't about to take any more, I wasn't on Vince's side anymore. I wasn't on anybody's side but my own. And I just wanted out. I wanted it to stop because it really had it's been like 2 years.
Right.
And it was just old. It was really old. So, I just, fine, I take the fucking belt, but, whatever. Put it on me when you want. But this shit's got to stop. And for Vince, he just felt the best way for it to stop was to get rid of Bret. Because I've always had back problems. And I heard the disc that eventually I had to get operated on was when I hurt, back when I just started my singles career. And it always bothered me. It was bothering me more and more and more up to that match. And I took the backdrop out of the match and I came over and I tried to clear the casket, but I caught the corner of it, bam, my back. I didn't get up or anything like that. Continued the match. Everything was fine. After the match, I was stiff. The next night we did TV. I didn't work, but we just did a little angle, I think, punching, kicking somebody or something to that effect. Went home, went to sleep that night, and I woke up the next day, couldn't move. Frozen in bed, and was called my parents, called the hospital. And by the time my parents, who lived 30 minutes away, got out to my house, I'd made it from my bed. I'd made it about 12 feet on my side, just trying to inch away. I've never been in so much pain. And I was just frozen. I couldn't move. I was stuck, sort of like in the fetal position, just trying to edge my way out. They came there, Dim rolled me up, took me to the hospital, and the guy just said, "No, you're fucked." Apparently, it had just, had exploded. It just had too much. It had compressed and then just boom, it was just out all over the place. Said my career was over, and I explained to him that I've got one match I got to make it to. So had him shoot me up with all the cortisone stuff. Called Vince and said, I'm getting operated on. Well, do you know about WrestleMania? I said, well, what I'd like to do is let me stay off that one, the next pay-per-view, the February one. Let me train, ease this up and train best I can to try to get ready for WrestleMania. I said, I'll drop it to Steve. I said, but after that, I think it's time, for you and me to realize that may be my last match. And he was in denial about it being my last match, but I said, I think you really need to, I had a doctor call him, I had him show him everything. I said, I think it's time to really start to, think.
So it's basically a freak accident, so to speak. It wasn't just
your
back was acting up, but
yeah. Well, a lot of times it's already there before you know it. So I'm guessing it was there, but I think that's the only thing I can remember is that had to be the final blow to make it
right,
to make it go.
Right.
Wrestling the match with Steve obviously didn't help it any. So whatever damage I did, I only worsened it by going into that match. If you watch that match, I look slow. My left leg or my right leg, I'm dragging a little bit. I couldn't even get up off the ground on my forearm and the bump, the little flare bump I took, my feet, my timing was off and just wasn't, I wasn't there. I took a real horrible backdrop, barely cut over him. So it just, I didn't have much feeling in it. It was just sort of dead. I was dragging, but finished the match and came in and iced it down. And, me and Steve wept and then Vince came in. We all wept. And, then I went home and that was it. I tried to rehab it for almost a year, about 6 to 8 months. I rehabbed it. The doctor looked at it and said, no, it ain't happening. So called Vince, told him, I said, it ain't happening. I gotta get fused. And I like Dwayne. He's a nice kid. I thought shit, he showed me a whole nother side on Saturday Night Live. I thought he did fantastic.
Right.
I thought it was a riot.
Now, although the WWF is still my first love, it turns out that I'm also pretty good and a natural at comedy. And people also tell me I look like a sexy Rob Schneider.
So I like him. The problem I have is, with wrestling in general. And that's that, believe it or not, I can't believe it, but I think my traditionalist side of me is starting to come out a little bit. I miss some of the, the good old wrestling every now and then. And it's funny because I'm a guy, I'm one of the very main players, if not the main player, that made it go the other direction.
Are you surprised at Hunter's success? No.
Not at all. No. I'm not surprised of anybody's success that's there now. like think about it. I can't think of, and that is what I do. Like I can't think of anybody there right off the hand that isn't in the spot that they're in that shouldn't be there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Most, if not all of them have earned it. And the ones that may or may not have earned it, came from some other place and were big. So we have to at least use them, but I like, Hunter's talented. I knew he'd be, a world champion someday. No doubt.
When Owen Hart came back to the company, because he eventually walked out after the whole thing happened, he started, I guess you guys did a quick angle between the two of you, and it was switched over from you and Owen to Hunter and Owen. Why was that?
Because they just wanted those two to work with each other. Owen didn't like that, Owen knew that. Owen and I talked beforehand, and he said, and Owen was always
business.
Yeah, a very smart one of the family, could separate one from the other. What was important to Owen was his family and all that stuff. So we went over that, but he knew there was only going to be one match with me, and then would go off with Hunter. He didn't like that because he wanted to work with the main event. But Vince wanted a way to get Hunter over. But there was no one saying, because I loved working with Owen, but Vince didn't think Owen was main event material. Owen fell into the same thing that Davey fell into. You have good matches, boom, we get that one shot. We could never get that long program with the main event guy. And Owen's a great worker, but he didn't eat, sleep, and drink wrestling either. He was a guy, and that's one thing he and Bret did have in common. He was the kind of guy that came and said, "What have you got for him?"
Right.
Instead of, here's what I'd like to do, here's some ideas and stuff like that. So what hurt Owen was that he wasn't forceful enough in pushing for the things that he wanted. But the Hunter and Owen angle was just, that's where they wanted things to go. There was never any friction whatsoever between me and Owen at all.
Where were you, I guess, when you heard about the tragedy of Owen Hart?
I was in Hawaii taping Pacific Blue.
Right.
Had people waiting. How's it here now, Miss
Corey?
Michael Shane.
And I remember coming off the set one day, and one of the crew people saying, "Did you hear about Owen Hart?" I said, "No." Apparently he died. I said, "What?" And because of the time difference, I'm trying to figure out what day it is, shit like that. Remember, he wants to pay per view, so my wife and I just went up and just watched CNN until it came on. Sure enough, we saw it, and we just,
We don't have any answers as to how this happened yet. And we will shortly. And as soon as we know something, you'll know something.
You climb into that ring, and you never know when it could be your last time getting into a ring. I know what it feels like.
Made a couple calls to my parents, and then they said, yeah. Paged Hunter, but he didn't call me back. And the next night, we just sat there and watched Raw and just, cried like everybody else in the country. It was just, one of those things. I miss the fact that I wasn't there to be able to do something. I think that's probably why, because I never knew there was even anything said about there was supposedly something between me and Owen. But my guess is probably maybe that's why, because everybody was on there to do the tributes of Shawn. And Shawn was off in Hawaii doing, a television show.
What are your memories of, I'm skipping around a lot now,
Sure.
Cactus Jack and Mankind, your match in Philadelphia?
But, yeah, cool.
Right.
Yeah, I would have liked, that's one of the regrets of my careers. I would have really liked to have done a whole program with Mick. I think he and I could have done some really, really great stuff. But that match also was just a match that just sort of threw together. It was the one thing with doing those pay-per-views every month. A lot of times Vince doesn't really, have a full idea where he's going. So that one was just a match he just threw in there.
Right.
And it turned out, which I think both Mick and I were confident it would be. And after that said, yeah, get us in a program sometime. But we were always, when he was the heel, I was usually the heel, or when he was a babyface, I was a babyface. And I think it's something they probably would have saved for some other time had my career gone on. But no, it was a blast. And I like, Mick comes up with some very nifty things. Like during that match, he not during the match, but before the match, he said, "How about we do a spot?" You know, because he had seen in a match, you know, I don't know, maybe a year prior to that, where I was with Vader, and I got mad because he didn't move.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah,
yeah, he didn't move. He was supposed to.
My next question.
Boom! Bam! And I kicked him in the head. I'm sorry. That's a good guy. But so he said, "Well, since you've done that before, let's do a spot where it looks like I fuck up, and you go over, boom, and we sort of get into it." So if you watch during the match, I do a thing where he shoots me in. I go for the reverse cross body. He just walk away, and I come off like, "Damn it!" Boom, boom, and I punch him, and then we start laying some pretty heavy, stiff shots. And I go to snap mirror, and he looks, boom. Then I turn around, and he said, because he said you can just hit him in that mask and it hurts. So he said just throw him in there. So I was just boom, and it looked like some pretty physical shots, you know. And then we continued, but it was a spot we just threw in there. And a lot of people bid on that. They thought I got hot again during the match.
Did you see this phenomenon of Steve Austin? Did you see it happening as big as it was going to happen?
Oh, you betcha. You bet. That's why I was proud to be the guy that, you know, the only thing that disappointed me is that I couldn't do it to the best of my ability. You know, but you bet. I you know, I saw Steve being the next guy, and I don't know that I saw wrestling, period, getting this big.
I like that, and you go like what?
But I certainly knew that he was the guy that was going to take us wherever it was going to go.
Right.
You know, for sure. Steve Austin can be Steve Williams when he's here, home in San Antonio, and he'll be stone cold at work. And that's what I like about him. He can separate the two, and he knows very well that I like him a great deal.
Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. And if it's your first time on this channel, welcome, and check out some of the other videos that I have on this channel. And as mentioned in the beginning of the video, we recently launched our Attitude Era Generation merchandise store, and I'll drop the link in the description below. Please check it out.